we have one of the most anticipated interviews in the show's history. Someone who mentored and tutored Marcellus Wiley. That's probably not his greatest accomplishment. I think 200 sacks, the Hall of Fame, 4 Super Bowl appearances, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL. But Bruce, we will start there. You played 3 seasons with Marcellus Wiley. What's your fondest memory of tutoring Marcellus?
Man, every day was an experience. This young brother was such a joy to be around. After I was this seasoned veteran and trying to pass on some of this knowledge to Marcellus so he could have the opportunity to blossom and become that player he wanted to become in the National Football League. But he was like a sponge. He wanted to learn. He wanted to engage. He wanted to find out the secrets and the nuances of the art of playing the defensive end position and rushing the quarterback. So it was my honor and my pleasure to have that opportunity to spend that time with him.
You know, listening to you with that description, besides talent, work ethic, desire, drive, what separated Marcellus's level of success from yours besides those issues?
Well, he graduated from Columbia. And but look, man, he was just this ball of energy and this personality that went along with all of this energy that he had inside of him. And from the way he talked, the way he carried himself, the way he engaged with other individuals, particularly his teammates. He was always such a joy to be around and come to work that next day. And if you spent any time in our locker room, it was a comedy show every single day between the likes of Thurman Thomas and Jim Kelly and Darryl Talley. And then you add Marcellus to the big mix and Ted Washington and so many others. It was such a joy to go to work in the morning because you knew that it wasn't like going to work. You were going to be with your brothers and continuing to grow that bond that would only transfer and become stronger as you entered out into that field to go to war. So, man, it was just a fun and exciting time, even at that stage when Marcellus came, and they actually drafted him to take my job. Most people didn't know that. But, me being and understanding that everything has a shelf life, and one day it would have been my time to give it up and pass that torch on. But instead of looking at, I call him my son, as a threat, I said it's time for me to pass this knowledge on so this man can have a productive life and make all the money he possibly can and make a name for himself. So that's what this was all about.
Man, love it, man. Long story short, there's only one Bruce Smith, so he didn't have any concerns about passing on the knowledge. There was only going to be one, number 78, man. And you know how much I think of you on and off the field. I call you my football pops, man. You taught me so much. But being around you for those years and knowing how great you are, the best defensive lineman to ever live, you feel a bit underrated because you were in Buffalo rather than a large market city like New York?
Well, obviously, if I would have played in a bigger market, perhaps it might have been a different outcome and perception. But I think for the most part, people knew us for our dynamic offense. We were, particularly in the early 90s and the late 80s, we were the most prolific offensive unit at that time for about 4, 5, 6 years. We put points on the board like no other team in that period of time with that that K-gun and no-huddle offense with Jim Kelly at the helm and Thurman Thomas and Andre Reed and James Lofton and Steve Tasker, just to name a few of them. And Ted Machabrota, who was the offensive coordinator when we first got started. And obviously we had a excellent backup quarterback and part coach, Frank Wright. So we had a lot of guys that were not only great athletes, they were student of the games. But just to focus on, had I played in a different city, who knows? The story might not have turned out the way it did. But the one thing that I can say is that the evolution of my game existed because I wanted to become a student of the game. I wanted to be that versatile player that not only was dominant against the run, but was dominant against the pass while playing in that 3-4 defensive scheme, which, you know, Marcellus, it's the 3-4 defensive scheme is pretty much devised for the linebackers to make tackles, not the defensive linemen. We keep the linebackers free. I know Ted used to hate, he'd have to eat up the double team so the inside linebackers could scrape and make the tackles. But once you perfect your craft and you understand the defensive schemes and you understand where that hole is open for that split second, so you can still, in the defensive framework, you can still have your gap responsibility, but you can penetrate and get in the backfield. And you know, that's where I think I stepped my game up and being able to be that student of the game and know when they line up in a certain formation, I knew what play was coming out. And I was able to exploit that and get into the backfield.
All right, we're going to run the K-gun offense. I'm going to shoot these at you quick. How much more would you have been celebrated if you guys had won one of those 4 Super Bowls?
Well, I think obviously it would have certainly made a huge difference. And I think the best chance we had was the first one against the New York Giants, and we lost by 1 point because of a missed field goal. But nevertheless, we still had our opportunities in that particular ball game to win that ball game. I think the coaching staff from the Giants did an excellent job of dropping 9 people and only rushing 2, and it caught us off guard, and we just didn't adjust to it very well.
Okay, there's an argument I have. It feels like on a weekly basis, and you know my answer, but all respect to the late, great Reggie White and Bruce Smith. Who's the greatest defensive end of all time? I'm waiting.
Come on. And this, again, you know, this was in my football life story. I'm not boasting. I'm not bragging. I'm talking about film study. I'm talking about statistics. I'm talking about having to defeat the double team on a consistent basis. Reggie was in a class that most people, he was built differently. Reggie was a power rusher. He had the signature hump move. He was able to be put into a situation where he played on a defensive line with Sean Jones and Clyde Simmons, who both had over 100 sacks in their career. Played for the late, great Buddy Ryan, who was the architect of the Bear defense, which means you send more people than the offense can block. So nobody gets double teamed. And there's even a free blitzer that comes through. So having said that, Reggie Wright, dear friend, love him to death. Reggie and I had this conversation a number of times. He said, Bruce, if you had played in a 4-3 defense, no one would have ever touched you because you wouldn't have gotten double teamed to the extent that you did because you were in a 3-4. So that speaks for itself. A 3-4 versus a 4-3. that 3-4 defensive end is going to get double teamed consistently. A 4-3 defensive end has outside leverage, and he is not going to get double teamed as much.
Man, preach, brother, preach. I've been saying that. Look, Buffalo, we both played there. It doesn't always get a good rap. Describe your relationship with the city of Buffalo.
Oh, man, I love Buffalo. I love the people in Buffalo. I love the food. I love chicken. I love the chicken wings. I love chefs. And the weather kind of grows on you as well after a while. And particularly when you're winning, the weather warms up. It feels mighty good. And the fans are just so enthusiastic, passionate, and they have such a desire to support their sports. So that's what made us want to go out and play extremely hard and make them feel proud and so forth. So it was an incredible experience for me, and I try and get back as often as I possibly can. And I've got a lot of friends there that still live in Buffalo. I had a dear friend that passed away, Larry White, who was a police officer in Buffalo. But I've got a number of friends there, and Buffalo is very fond in my heart.
Bruce, you mentioned the Football Life documentary on the NFL Network. I watched it. It was tremendous. In there, though, Steve Tasker mentioned that you and Jim Kelly did not start off with the greatest relationship. And then I watched Jim Kelly talk about you as a brother now. You guys are very, very close. Why did you guys, what happened early on, and then how did you guys become so close?
Well, I think we were two-star athletes, just young. He was the quarterback of the team, and I wasn't necessarily the quarterback on defense, but I was the first player picked in the draft. And I don't think it was anything that was tremendously contentious. I just think that in some cases, one might have taken an offense to something that was said here or there. Actually, I do remember one of the things that it was during practice, and Jim had made a statement off of the field or something, and I said, okay, I'm just going to show Jim I can have my way during practice when we start live drills and so forth. So I beat the left tackle around the corner and was kind of toying with him a little bit. And I went behind Jim and knocked the ball out of his hands, which wasn't the smartest thing to do because I could have injured our star quarterback. And then we would have been obviously in a bad situation for the season or until he came back. And we got into a little confrontation. But I think he got the point that let's keep this civil, and we'll be able to have a workable relationship. But we really started bonding together when Jim would have, after home games, he would have get together at his house in the basement. He would invite the whole team and their family over. We would go down, and man, we'd be down there to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes shooting pool, watching other football games, and just having a great time. And his mother would be upstairs. And I found out that his mother had emphysema, which my father was suffering from at the time. So I would start going up stairs and talking with Mrs. Kelly. And I did this repeatedly, game after home game after home game after home game, and I just felt this connection with my father being here in Norfolk, Virginia, and in sitting there talking to her and understanding how she was ailing and couldn't breathe and had to walk around with the oxygen tank and so forth. And our relationship just seemed to blossom almost to the extent that his mother started calling me son as well. And that's how she thought of me, and that's how we bonded. And Jim, our relationship just kind of springboarded off of that. And I love that man to death. He's been through an awful lot with the loss of his son due to Krabbe's disease. He lost his father a number of years ago, and now him and his battle with cancer. But God bless him and his family, man. We think about him, and we cherish the relationship we have each and every day.
Bruce, I don't want to rush you, but we're running out of time, and I can't let you go without asking you about one other thing from that A Football Life documentary. It
Sure.
mentioned you were bullied as a kid, and I wanted to know a little details on that and what impact it had on your life.
Man, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up. But it taught me how to treat people and how not to treat people. It taught me a lot of lessons in life, man, because there were so many times that I came home and I just didn't know where to turn. I would cry sometimes. I would walk around depressed, and it was just a low point in my life, and trying to understand why this was happening to me. But I think the fact that sports came into my life, it started giving me that outlook and taking that timid little kid and making me more and more of a strong teenager and a young man, and giving me the discipline and things that were necessary to help me survive through the struggles of life. So it really was an important time in my life, and it would, who knows, it probably was necessary for me to go through those things, because now I look upon people as, I want to treat people. I want to treat people the way that I want to be treated, and that's the way I look at it. So it was a critical time in my young childhood.
Bruce, we want to thank you for coming on the show. You don't know this, but you're mentioned virtually every day off air on the show. Pray.
That's my dog.
Pray for what?
Yes.
LeVar brings you up virtually every day.
L.A.
You and Marty Schottenheimer. Thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. And be sure to check out more of the best clips from Speak For Yourself, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.